nice spaghetti pattern all around the world. And we have, as a virtual institution, our primary face is our web page. This is the web address. If you go to this web address, you can find out about ICAM, our branches, what kinds of science we're interested in, what the other NSF, International Materials Institutes are. Some other things that would be of interest to you, you can find out about upcoming workshops and events. You can find out about awards and fellowships for junior and a few for senior scientists. We also have work on education and engagement, I'll say a little bit more about. And we also have a number of presentations, which we host on sciv.tv. Let's see. And what we try to do is keep our administration small, but get our participation big. There's two directors. David Pines retired just this year as a co-director of ICAM, and Piers Coleman from Rutgers University took his place. So we have an executive committee with about 20 people that advise us. Those are scientists from different branches. We have an advisory committee on an ad hoc basis that will tell us what they think we should be doing for ICAM, an external advisory committee. Our goal is to get so many branches that it's hard to find external advisors. That's a joke. But we also have just a small staff. We have 2 administrative assistants and 40% each of business officers at Davis. We have a science steering committee and a fellowship committee and a board of governors with 1 member in each of these from the branches. So these are large, heavily participatory from our different branches. And we have thrust committees. Yvonne Smallyoke chairs the thrust committee on soft matter right here. Piers Coleman chairs the thrust committee on quantum matter. And Cecilia Clementi chairs the thrust committee on biological matter. So the overall administration is pretty small and represents about $300,000 of our approximately $1.5 million a year NSF award. And the overall participation is very large from our community. And again, I mentioned our thrusts. We basically have 4 thrusts: soft matter, like liquid crystals and colloidal matter, for example, granular matter; novel materials for energy, which this school and the attached workshop on photovoltaics are exemplary of. This is our newest thrust. Quantum matter, which could be, for example, high-temperature superconductors or cold atom condensates or memristors. Biological matter, biomolecules, but just this month we've had a workshop on neuronal matter, astrocytes as physical matter in Spain. And just to give you a couple of examples of how our activities give rise to new science. We sponsored an exchange award a few years back. Cornell actually is unfortunately no longer a member because with the financial collapse they dropped out. But the University of Tokyo and Cornell provided Kazuhiro Fujita to go work with, from the Uchida lab at Tokyo, to go work with Seamus Davis at Cornell. And there they did work showing with scanning tunneling microscopy on the surface of the bismuthate high-temperature superconductors that there are intrinsically disordered electronic states inside the high-temperature superconductors. And so the collaboration essentially enabled samples from Tokyo carried by Kazuhiro to go to Cornell, where the measurements were done partly by Kazuhiro Fujita. And we also sponsor fellowships, a very nice fellowship that Yvonne was involved in, a 2-year postdoctoral award to enable collaboration between institutions. By the way, you can also, there's a limited number of senior awards to help senior scientists go, for example, on a sabbatical leave and undertake some new project. This one involved a postdoc, Clayton LaPointe, between Tom Mason at UCLA and Yvonne here, and they did some very nice work on how you could get shape-dependent interactions between colloids in liquid crystals, so that the shape determines how the director field will mediate the interactions between 2 different colloids inside the system. And that was a very nice body of work. We also have schools. We annually have a school, the ICAM school. We usually every year have a school in Rio de Janeiro, sponsored with the Fabergé program down there. We have schools in Trieste, Cargés, and every other year we usually sponsor a school in Windsor Castle in the UK. These are from the first ICAM school in China, which was, as I recall, in 4 different cities in China. And of course, there have been 4 of these ICAM schools, this being the largest yet, I believe, here in Boulder, on materials for sustainable energy. But we also participate in engagement and outreach. So for example, we have developed an online museum called emergentuniverse.org. And the design of that museum was especially made to be favorable to people in the age group of sort of 14 to 28. You can go to emergentuniverse.org and judge for yourself. Have any of you ever gone to this site? Anybody in the audience? Okay, so go check it out. It has exhibits on basically what interactive exhibits on what emergence is. It has an interactive exhibit on amyloid matter, that is the protein aggregates that are present in Alzheimer's disease and some unfortunate, about half the elderly population's minds. And also, though, in spider silk, for example. And it also has an exhibit on superconductivity. One of those things in the exhibit is a flash mob envisioning of the superconducting transition, which you can find on this website and also on YouTube, that was filmed in the Sazala Library at the University of Washington. We also, and this is something to put out a little bit of notice, we haven't announced it yet, but we've started an annual competition for Science Education and Engagement Awards. We'll be giving out $20,000 in awards, probably for 2 different awards. We're going to send the announcement out by the end of this month, and the applications for these engagement awards will be due by the end of October. So this is another thing that people in ICAM can get involved in. And as I mentioned, we have quite an online archive of presentations from all of our workshops and schools. We use digital cameras like the ones you have here. We upload to sciv.tv. I know that they're uploaded in real time from this school. And as of May, we had well over 400,000 views of our presentations on sciv.tv, which is actually pretty darn good. If you look at the corresponding kinds of sites, for example, on the institutional channels on YouTube, we have far more hits than the University of California, Davis does on the institutional UC Davis channel on YouTube, for example. The biggest single one is actually from the ICAM-I2CAM here in 2008, and that's got over 12,000 views and growing quite a bit every day. There's also one with about 4,000 views on memristors from a meeting that we sponsored on memristors. And the workshop on organic photovoltaics from Brisbane from a couple years ago, all of those talks are on as well. And we're instigating a much easier process even to upload to sciv.tv and to then immediately link these to our website. Okay, so that's ICAM. I don't know, maybe I should stop here because I've been going on. Do you have any questions about ICAM so far, or what you could do with ICAM? Especially young people, you may not have known about this until you came to this school or until you heard about this from me.
How do you apply to one of those fellowships for?
Right, so if you go back to the web pages, the Exchange Awards are open anytime, although we're slightly overcommitted on Exchange Awards at the moment. We hope that to be remedied in the next few months. But the Exchange Awards and the Travel Awards, which are a smaller amount for a short travel of about a week, say, those you can apply for anytime on the ICAM website. The Fellowship Awards, the 2-year postdoctoral awards and the sabbatical awards, those we have a competition once a year. The next due date for those will be in December. And again, you can find that on the ICAM website. Quarterly, we have calls for workshop proposals. And the workshop proposals, we then have a quarterly meeting of our Science Steering Committee to discuss any new workshop proposals. And that way we can be responsive to new ideas from the community. We try to, actually, we can be adaptive as well. For whatever reasons, the proposal for the photovoltaic workshop here got slightly off the calendar, so we adapted and we were able to make a decision on that between our times, because we needed to help make it happen. So all of those things you can find on the website. Another question back here?
Yeah, I was just going to ask regarding fellowships. Can they be used for international?
Absolutely. The Exchange Awards, we have a limited number actually to go between institutions in the U.S. The Exchange Awards are mostly to be internationally used between one institution here and one institution abroad. The fellowships can be used between any 2 ICAM branches, whether they're here in the U.S., whether they're abroad, or between the U.S. and abroad. So the fellowships can be between any 2 branches.
Does it include any people from Africa? Because I see that you have...
Right. We would love to get into Africa. And we have potentially some inroads into South Africa. But at the moment, we don't have any branches in Africa. That's the one continent, other than Antarctica, where we're excluded. And okay, we would love to get into Africa, and we don't have anything there yet. But we could sponsor travel awards or potentially exchange awards to Africa from the U.S. if there was an institution you wanted to go to.
But not the other way around.
A limited number, the other way around, especially the travel awards. Yeah. Any other questions about the awards?
Yeah. How can an institute join the ICAM network?
I'm sorry?
How can an institute join the ICAM network?
Oh, yes. So we provide you with a memorandum of understanding that commits you to join ICAM for a period of time, and you have your choice about payment. If you want to pay for 3 years in advance, we'll give you a discount. Instead of $10,000 a year, you can pay $25,000 for 3 years.
Yeah.
And we'll throw in some knives. No, I'm just kidding. Otherwise, it's $10,000 a year with a memorandum of understanding. And then the understanding also has that you keep a corresponding amount at home for local activities. How you choose to do that at home depends upon the institution. Some have a rigid assignment of those funds to particular programs at their home institute. Others have completely flexible allocation of funds, as we do at Davis, for example. Any other questions about how to join ICAM or how to use ICAM? Not all of the awards are for the ICAM fellowships are limited to ICAM branches, the big postdoctoral fellowships and sabbatical leave fellowships. But you don't have to be an ICAM member to apply for an exchange award, a travel award, or organize a workshop. We do try to reserve most of the travel and exchange awards for ICAM participants, but you, in principle, don't have to be from an ICAM branch to receive one of those.
So how do you become an ICAM member?
The branch, you mean?
Yeah, how do you actually become a member? Is it like a subscription deal or?
Kind of, yeah. So we have, like I just said, we have a memorandum of understanding that each institution signs, ICAM signs, and then the branch signs.
Okay.
And then that dictates how long you join and what the terms of your participation are in terms of your contribution to the central fund.
Okay, so your members are basically institutions.
That's right. That's right. So when I say a member, I mean if you are a student or a faculty at a branch institution, you can apply, for example, for the fellowship and exchange, fellowship awards. Anyone in principle can apply for the exchange, postdoctoral, or organizing workshop awards, but we do give some favorable treatment to members from ICAM institutions.
So how can you find out what institutions are actually part of ICAM?
Well, if you go to that website, we have them all listed. All of our current branches are listed.
Okay.
Okay? Right. Where are you from?
University of Florida?
You're not in there. However, if you just transfer to Tallahassee, you're good. Question there?
Yeah, I was just wondering if the travel awards are for PhD or master students, or is it just for postdocs?
No. The travel awards are for any junior scientist. You can be an undergraduate, a postdoc, or a graduate student. We do restrict them to, the fellowships are restricted to postdocs within 4 years of their PhD. The travel awards and the exchange awards are restricted to postdocs within 5 years of their PhD, as long as that person doesn't have a permanent position. If you become an assistant professor 2 years after PhD, I'm sorry, we won't count you as a junior scientist anymore.
Yeah.
So that's,
for graduate students, it's fine.
but for graduate students, it's fine, and for undergraduates also. But mostly, we find that it's, the biggest number of people we have are graduate students involved in our activities. I should have said also that, as Ivan I know has done with all of his schools and workshops, we try to force our workshops and schools that we provide the majority sponsorship to be obey the so-called Fraunfelder rules. Hans Fraunfelder is a distinguished scientist who began as a nuclear physicist and then went into biological physics late in his career. And he insists that if you give talks, you should save about 30 to 50% of the time for discussion. And so if we provide the majority of the support, we insist upon that for any workshops that we support or schools that we support. You have flexibility how you implement that. It does not have to be right after the talk. But okay. Any other questions about ICAM? Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about.
That's great. Please do. No, this is great.
No, you were talking. Well, the other day we were talking. I don't know when it was yesterday, or whatever. My brain's foggy. We were talking about a lot of outreach stuff. So
Yeah.
what is some of the outreach and stuff that ICAM specifically does, like in terms of?
So I have, there's different definitions of outreach. So if you mean outreach in the terms of like science education, Or,
Sure.
yeah, so an example of that was this online museum here. And the Science Education Awards. We also experimented, actually, we created, let's see, is this it? Oh, I think the battery's dead. We created a number of, I think I may be wrong. Oh, okay. We created a number of modules on magnetism and superconductivity, thank you, for middle school students. And primarily through the Davis ICAM funds, not through the large-scale ICAM funds, our local funds. We helped sponsor a really cool class by a web designer from San Francisco. We sponsored a really cool class where they designed web pages aimed towards middle school students to engage about climate change and particularly carbon sinking. And I don't have that website handy, but I can look it up and provide it to you if you're interested. We also have we also sponsored a number of videos called Great Explanations, where we have short, brief video clips of ICAM scientists explaining their work.
Oh.
Yeah, those are some of the things we've done. And then the 2 awards we did last year, one was for the Lab Rats program, which is along the lines of a kind of a science boot camp for middle school students especially. And another was for Julian Bobroff from the University of Paris South, who does a lot of incredible outreach work on superconductivity in France. So this year, who knows? I think also we sponsored a small program on superconductivity at Columbus, and then Dini Trivedi from Ohio State ran.
So Daniel,
Yeah.
you know, 2 days ago we had an global outreach forum,
Oh,
and we finished 10:15 p.m. And that forum we had like 10 hands, you know, people wanted to participate in discussion first.
wow, cool. That's great. Well, this is happening. So this would not be just for faculty members. If there was a postdoc or a student who had a good idea here, and they put in a proposal, this is happening. But again, it'll be announced basically September 1st with the deadline of October 31st for these SEE proposals. Look for the announcement on the ICAM web pages. Let's see. I guess you could also regard this as kind of an outreach activity, although that's more of an outreach to our scientific community. These are technical presentations, but okay. So that's ICAM. What is the Materials Genome Initiative? Well, I'll send around these PowerPoint slides to whoever wants them, but there is a white paper on whitehouse.gov. It'll come up immediately if you Google it, and it's instructive to read it to find out what the Science Advisory Council to the White House has in mind. But the basic goal is to replace this model for materials development with a different model. This model for materials development says, okay, you have a discovery of a new material, then you go through development phase, you then optimize the properties, maybe you then go through a systems design and integration of the material, certify it, manufacture it, and then deploy it out to the public. So this is a so-called linear model, and part of the concern is that to get from discovery to the end here, if you're actually going to have a successful material, as the white paper points out, can be a 15 to 20 year or longer process. For example, while there are a few quick applications of high temperature superconductivities, particularly in squids and in cell phone filters within, say, 5 years of the discovery of high temperature superconductivity, we're still waiting to a large degree to get a large scale application of high temperature superconductors outside of those 2 examples. And so the goal, this is just a schematic, of course, lifted from this White House white paper, but the goal is to go from this model where you have this very slow development of materials to this model where, because you make it nonlinear, you take the linear chain and couple everything together. Because you make it nonlinear, you somehow wind up with a much faster pace of development. Now, I think to their credit, they don't try to be prescriptive about how this is going to happen. They're just throwing it out there and saying, we're going to provide funding to people to try to fit into this kind of a picture that will hopefully accelerate the development of these materials and lead to an infrastructure that looks like this, where in the middle of it, the discovery development happens with a combination of experimental tools, data storage, and computational tools. And I think it's this part and this part that remind them of the Human Genome Project. That is, in some sense, you know, what the genome has done is it's allowed us to store, the Genome Project has allowed us to store the sequences of huge numbers of proteins and RNAs that can then be data mined to look for properties of those proteins and RNAs. And in order to do that, you need sophisticated computational tools. The analogy is not perfect, but the idea is to come up with some kind of system of storing data about materials that's open access, like these protein databases are from all of the sequencing, and then to also have an open source database of computational tools, and to have a sort of feedback loop with experiment to continually update and improve the computational tools side of things. These would be, molecular dynamics programs, for example, electronic structure programs, ones that integrate across multiple scales, because many of the interesting materials will integrate across multiple scales. And then hopefully, out of this core, you'll help clean energy, human welfare. The example they give is better bicycle helmets to prevent head injuries in the white paper, national security, and the next generation workforce. This is a huge concern of the White House as well. And I just noticed that if you look here, the core emphasis really seems to be, at least 2/3 of it, seems to be on sort of theory, simulation, or information technology, which to a large degree is what has driven once the raw data is taken from the sequencing, that's what's driven the Human Genome Project as well. This is a little counter to the way that ICAM has operated, where we believe that out of experimental discovery that this will flow, but that's how they're envisioning it for the Materials Genome Initiative. And of course, already I think ICAM can contribute here in terms of trying to develop new experimental tools. For example, with our schools, our workshops, our exchange awards, working on this next generation workforce, and also with our science engagement, because a lot of the people in this next generation workforce are not going to be PhDs. They're going to be bachelor's degrees in science that will fulfill technical jobs, but they don't necessarily have to be PhDs. We imagine that ICAM can certainly help out in these areas and hopefully inform these other areas of society. Now, again, just to bolster my observation that it seems to be primarily, so far at least, simulation and theory driven, the two biggest calls that have come out so far for the Materials Genome Initiative that I'm aware of are this one from the NSF Department of Materials, Division of Materials Research, which called for cyber infrastructure coordination for multi-user research facilities, and the Department of Energy one, which calls for predictive theory and modeling across a wide range of chemical and solid-state sciences. Connected to the Materials Genome Initiative, but somehow also sort of sitting off by itself as a brainchild, I believe, of Steve Chu and his brain trust at the Department of Energy, is the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Energy. That has had a number of calls clearly relevant to the Materials Genome Initiative, but they seem to be more varied than these calls. And by the way, the CONNECT program, I don't know if you heard of that, but the CONNECT program is operated quarterly. It could be a source of funding for we want to try to continue this school in following years. So where can ICAM help? Well, it certainly appears that if you look at the calls for the Materials Genome Initiative so far, it's driven by relatively small teams, nothing as large as ICAM. And through the exchange, travel, and fellowship proposals, through our workshops and schools, we can help get things going to give ideas for small teams. We can provide a little bit of infrastructure for online community and team building. For example, for any workshop or any group in ICAM that wants to start it, we can make a subdomain of the ICAM web pages, which is basically autonomous to that group, that can have wiki, blog, file upload capabilities. For example, David Pines, I think were you at the workshop in Aspen, Yvonne? Yes. Yeah, David Pines just held a workshop in Aspen on engagement, on outreach. And this is the page right here. I can pull it over. And if it shows up, I don't know if it's going to show up here. Let me try. But there is a wiki site. Here it is, yeah. There is a wiki site on the page. David wanted it right on the front page, where there can be an ongoing discussion. Oops, there can be an ongoing discussion. And if you scroll down, you'll see that it is ongoing. There's an ongoing discussion. You can read the discussion. That's open source, but if you want to contribute, you have to register at ICAM. Any contributions have to be after you register and sign on in ICAM. And then on that wiki site, you can post your ideas, you can post your files. Let's see. Oh, I'd have to log in here, but in any case, on this wiki site, you can log in and post your files. There's a whole bunch of posts there from the people who participated in this engagement workshop. Okay, and for example, along those lines, as with one of the science proposals that emerged from our group, so those are my little kids there when they were much younger. With one of the proposals, whoops, let me go back. With one of the proposals, Gabi Kotliar from Rutgers put together for the NSF call for Materials Genome Initiative proposals. We agreed to house open source software for the dynamical mean field theory programs that Gabi Kotliar was would develop if his proposal is funded. Let's see, we also have, it's a small cluster, but if we decide to in ICAM, we can expand it. We have a small GPU cluster. For those of you who know, GPUs are a way to vastly accelerate molecular dynamics by about a factor of 20. It is small. Robert injured himself. No, he didn't really, but putting it together. But that's Robert Hare and Jesse Singh, 2 students at Davis. It's open to the ICAM community. You can find application online if you'd like to use it. And we have the major molecular dynamics software on there. But in principle, we have a few double precision GPUs also, which could be used for Fermi on Monte Carlo, for example. So far, all of the work that's been done on it has been molecular dynamics, but in principle, Gergi Zamani, who I know is speaking here next week, was interested in this possibly for magnetic modeling for magnetic materials. And I know there's some interest, particularly in the more in the quantum QCD community about using these GPUs for quantum Monte Carlo. But there you need it for double precision. And you'd have to rewrite your Monte Carlo codes to use it. But it's there. If you want to use it, it's there right now. Okay, now maybe just to give you a storyline that sort of reflects my personal biography. When I began at Cornell all those many years ago, before many of you in this room were born, I was a theoretical solid state physicist, and I worked on something called the Kondo problem. And whenever I went on an airplane, I had to explain to people what it was and that it didn't have anything to do with real estate. And then, because of ICAM, I got interested in problems in biological matter. And in particular, I got interested in problems with the amyloidogenic proteins. Those are proteins that self-assemble in diseases like mad cow, but they can also operate functionally, for example, in spider silk. They can operate functionally in the formation of yeast and bacterial biocolonies, biofilms, in terms of connecting those cells together, the initial connection of those cells. And basically, my interest in this grew out of ICAM workshops that I helped to organize and attend. And then our group in particular got interested in this one motif that may lend itself to self-assembly called the left-handed beta helix motif. Now here, a truth in advertising, this left-handed beta helix motif is known to exist in some enzymes in bacteria, and it's known to exist in an antifreeze protein in one insect caterpillar. On the other hand, it hasn't been proven to have anything to do yet with the proteins involved in mad cow disease, for example. But that didn't stop us from dreaming up some ideas associated with it. It's a particularly beautiful structure. This is a so-called ribbon structure of the protein, this left-handed beta helix. And this is an image of the left-handed beta helix that's involved as a spruce budward antifreeze protein. What's particularly remarkable as sort of a piece of material science from the biology perspective is on one side of this left-handed beta helix, you can see it's kind of a triangular prism. There's 15 amino acids per repeat in this particular beta helix. On one side of it, you can see that this amino acid has a number of copies. That amino acid is threonine. Threonine has an oxygen on it which will happily hydrogen bond to the oxygen in water. So the idea is that this face of this antifreeze protein will sit on the surface. It's in perfect registry with the ice crystals. It will sit on the surface, and if you get enough of those around, it can cap the ice crystal and prevent it from growing inside of the spruce budworm. Okay, so what does this have to do with possible applications to materials? Well, the idea is that we took advantage of the Strider cluster, which ICAM has provided, we took advantage of the Strider cluster to do lots of stability tests on different designs for beta helical proteins. And then we got the idea, inspired by work from Angela Belcher at MIT, if you know her work, where she uses viruses to grow batteries and viruses to grow, hopefully, photovoltaics. She's working on that right now. We were inspired by that to imagine that we could put peptide loops on the corners of these beta helices and see if we could grow nanoparticles off of those. Now, that's science fiction at this point. This is a proposal, but this is an idea of where this might go and how this could feed into the Materials Genome Initiative. It's definitely going to be a multi-scale problem because we have to connect these nanoparticles of inorganic materials with these organic amyloids, and then hopefully actually grow those amyloids on micron scale on the surfaces of substrates, either two-dimensionally or three-dimensionally. But by putting the appropriate templating loops on the corners of our left-handed beta helices, as Belcher has done with viral capsids, we should be able to grow nanoparticles of whatever type we desire. Then we'll get the amyloids to self-assemble in two-dimensional layers or potentially in three-dimensional stacks using tricks of, from nanochemistry. And then, for example, the dream is we could grow a multi-junction photovoltaic by growing the first layer with one species of nanoparticle, growing the second layer with a different species of nanoparticle, and growing the third layer with yet a different species of nanoparticle. Could this plug into ICAM and the MGI? Yes, we could benefit, for example, from exchange awards with some of the groups here in Colorado working on photovoltaics. We can imagine that this could be a nice workshop to bring people together from different disciplines who might be interested in working on these kinds of materials. And obviously, whatever we find, we can store in an open source basis on the ICAM website, for example, all the data and any software, special software that we develop to study the self-assembly of these materials. This is science fiction at the moment. We do have a seed proposal in for this at UC Davis, and we're waiting to hear if that might be funded with a multidisciplinary group, including biologists, engineers, physicists, and chemists. I certainly see that this kind of idea could plug into both ICAM and to the Materials Genome Initiative, as I'm sure a number of ideas out in the audience could as well. That's my own vision of what ICAM is, what the Materials Genome Initiative is, how ICAM could help you possibly participate in the Materials Genome Initiative, and an idea I have about a project that might help me participate. And if you have any other questions or further discussion, I'm happy to do it. Yeah.
Regarding the fund, is it possible that you provide research grant for like a young researcher or even young lecturers who just started their careers in this field or something?
Well, it depends. I mean, so are you talking about somebody who's already sort of got a faculty position, or?
Yeah.
That's
something like work, because sometimes they're just starting their work or they need some research.
Right. Well, the main way to do that would be we could help you with like an exchange award or a fellowship for one of your students, or if you wanted to, we could help you with like you'd be considered a senior scientist for one of the fellowships if you wanted to then go to another institution, but not per se like a startup grant, something like that. That we don't do. Yeah.
So just going back to the fellowships.
Yeah, sure.
So you mentioned that you could have this sort of collaborative work of students with other institutions if they're member institutions?
For the fellowships, it has to be member institutions, right? Because we take all of that money from our branch, almost all of that money we take from our branch fund. So therefore, we say, hey, that's got to be the branches.
Okay.
But the NSF money is more open.
And that's like a year project, or how does it?
Well, it's a year with a year renewable. So it's in principle 2 years. Yeah. Clayton LaPointe, for example, was on a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship. I think you've had a second with someone from Bryce, if I remember right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could it also work for graduate students?
It's only that one is only for postdocs. So that one's only for postdocs.
And does it have to be? So I mentioned on the website they have member institutions and then they have the member Like, did you say like number of faculty members or something like that?
Right, so the idea of anybody who's participating in ICAM activities, they register and automatically their name goes onto the page for that branch.
So does it have to be those specific faculty
No,
members? It could be
No,
anyone?
anybody from the institution, unless there's some restriction in the way that it's funded locally.
So what opportunities do you guys have other than Travel Grants for graduate students?
Well, there are the workshops in the schools, and there is I mean, we provide a little bit of this kind of, I mean, I won't say this is the world-beating cyber infrastructure, but a little bit of this cyber infrastructure as well. If you want to sort of create a virtual community, if you want to run on our little GPU cluster to see if you can get something interesting out of it, for example. Then, of course, also the various travel awards and fellowships. Other
Do we have
questions?
more questions?
Yeah, other questions? Yeah.
Other institutes can join to this network, like some universities which are not part of this network, how they can join?
Right, so, I mean, certainly, they can participate. I mean, the workshops and schools are open basically to anybody, although we try to give some preference to students and postdocs from ICAM branches, okay? But in principle, the schools and workshops are open to anybody to participate, and a limited number, as I said, of the travel and exchange awards are open for participation as well. But to become a member institution, you know, you do what I said. You get a memorandum of understanding and take it from there. Now, some of our institutions are actually consortia. For example, our Paris branch actually represents 7 different institutions. And then we have to make sure that each of those institutions doesn't feel like they're an individual branch of ICAM, because that'd be slightly unfair to, for example, Boulder. In fact, the other consortium here in Colorado is a consortium between Colorado School of Mines, University of Denver, and Colorado University Denver. Right. So that's another way to join and offset some of the expenses. Yeah. Which universities? Australian, yes, Queensland. Right. Where are you from? So from where? Okay. Darwin, yeah, right, up north, yeah. Right. Okay.
Colombia?
Colombia is not. Colombia is not. We've had discussions with people from Colombia before, but they've never quite taken that step. But if you want to go back and talk to your advisors, you know. I'm sorry?
India?
Oh, I'm sorry. You mean
Colombia,
you
the
mean
country.
Colombia, the country? I'm sorry.
Not Colombia.
I meant Columbia University. My apologies. Not Columbia, the country. We have 2 branches in South America at present. We have CONACET, which is sort of a large branch, overarching branch within Argentina, and FAPRG, which is in Rio de Janeiro. A consortium in Rio de Janeiro. We have some hopes of getting a larger network in Brazil, but that hasn't happened yet. I'm sorry, what was your?
India.
Yes, 2 branches in India at present, the JNCSR in Bangalore and the NCBS in Bangalore. And again, we hope to try to bring in more branches in India. There is a fund, the name is escaping me right now, the appropriate fund, but Piers Coleman and I are approaching it's a fund that sort of it links the US NSF to the corresponding organizations in India.
DST?
No. It's a particular fund. In any case, the hope is that through that fund we can actually sort of nucleate a much larger network within India. There's a number of institutions that have expressed interest in joining, but so far the only 2 that have are ACBS and JNCSR. Where are you from?
I'm coming from Belgium.
Sorry?
I'm originally from India, but I'm coming from Belgium.
Oh, from Belgium. Okay.
Is there a university in Belgium?
We're surrounding you. We've got Amsterdam, and we've got Paris, but not Belgium. Yeah.
How does ICAM treat the intellectual property of sponsored research?
Oh well, to be honest, that's pretty much up to the individual investigators. We haven't made any claim on that. That's up to sort of the host, usually the host institution for from where they're from. They want the biggest piece.
Well, when you facilitate so many collaborations, all those institutions want a piece.
Yeah, I know,
So
yeah.
that's-
So far, it hasn't come up. I don't know, Yvonne, has that come up for any of your? Yeah, so far it hasn't come up, but it could.
Well, BGI is successful, it should.
Yeah. Well, we're more on the fundamental side. I should say we're sort of physics-centric. I'm not saying physicists don't come up with patents. But I don't know if we come up, I could be wrong, I don't know if we come up with as many patents as chemists and engineers and so on. I could be wrong about that. I look at Sue Carter, I think. But,
I think I've come up with many.
yeah, she comes up, she kind of handles most of the physics community, I think. But so if you look at our participation list, we're sort of usually every year about 60% physics. And then, other chemistry, biology, chemical engineering, those ones are pretty big participants as well. Yeah.
Okay, when an institute becomes your member, does it mean that the whole, staff or the whole students and everything become your member?
Well, in principle, yes, but that does depend. I mean, for example, at Cornell, we have sort of a reinvigorated participation at Cornell, but it's only basically through Seamus Davis's group at Cornell, which is part of an energy consortium between Brookhaven, Cornell, and Illinois. So it depends on how you set it up for your particular institution. At the University of Kyoto, the money actually comes from the Economics Institute, which is a surprising thing. But they're very generous, and they include anybody at the university in the program. So it depends on your institution. At Davis, in principle, anybody could be involved. We haven't had any poets apply for support, but in principle, anybody could be involved. Okay, well, there's still some pizza up here. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming out.